Let's make this one quicker than the trial itself. What's up, guys? All here, and here we are to do a quick and speedy review of chapter 245 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the decisive battle in the uninhabited demon infestation Juku, part 17. We got a whole bunch to talk about in a solid 15 minutes each, so as I set up this timer, let's not waste any more time, and let us begin to hop right on into it. If I can figure out where this timer... Okay, thank you. Editing me. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So as per standard, we're going to break this down into 3 sections: characters, scaling, and plot. But first things first, we got to open up with the last part. We're going to go to plot. Ready? 5 minutes. All right, so for the plot of this chapter, obviously the major thing that happened, this kind of doesn't matter, like, at all plot-wise. Like, I mean, sure, Hikari and Urume start fighting. Like, the main plot thing that happens here is that it's confirmed that Hikari's in Jackpot. I mean, it had to be assumed. I don't think anyone thought that, like, base Hikari was going to do anything to Urume. So, like, I don't know. I don't think anyone thought that, but if they did, that's kind of a scaling thing, though. So not necessarily much happens here. It just confirms that these two are not only fighting, but also away from the main battlefield, which means we will not expect either of these two to interfere before this fight is over, which means it could end and they end up interfering next chapter, or it could end in like 5 chapters and we don't see these two for a while. I'm leaning more towards the latter, because even though Urume appears to open something akin to a domain expansion here, I highly doubt like this battle's going to end that quickly for either. Whether you think Hikari or Urume is going to win, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time, but these two, they're likely going to be scrapping for a minute. If it's going to get off screen, it's going to get off screen, but considering Gege showed us this part of the fight and Urume is just opening domain, we're most likely going to get a bit of an extension to this. Most likely not that quickly, though. But for the main plot thing, obviously, it is Ryoma and Sukuna completely skipping the trial. Notably, a lot of people, myself included, had like a tiny itty-bitty bit of hope that we were going to get something from this. A little bit more than just a quick guilty verdict, but no. That's all Sukuna was willing to give us, as he says, let's hurry up and end this. So obviously, Sukuna was on quick timing. And on top of that, the other major plot development that comes from this is that Sukuna does not, in fact, lose the main technique of his, which would be Shrine. As you can see, he still has Shrine here. The main thing he lost was Kamutoke. This bad boy right here. And fun fact, did you happen to know? I have it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Sukuna had it on him, and apparently he did not keep it on him at all times, because now Judgment took that away, and not actually his main technique. This has led to a lot of contentions that I'm going to talk about in another video in of itself, but for a plot development, I mean, to be fair, I'll even go into a little bit of it here, considering I do have 2 minutes and 52 seconds left to discuss the plot. I genuinely didn't really think this was going to mean too much. Like, don't get me wrong, Gege surprised me before by giving relatively new characters, like, major moments. Like, I still am shocked that Takaba played such a large part in the defeat of Suguru Geto Kenjaku. Like, darn. Like, I mean, sure, it's most likely, based on how the interaction went towards the end of that conflict, that Yudakotsu still would have won the battle. But the fact that Takaba was such a contributing factor, well, I guess surprised me is an understatement. It blew my mind that Takaba was so fundamentally important to Kenny and his overall defeat, at least in Suguru Geto's body. Call me a Kenny Coper, which I am, but I still assume that something's going to cook with Kenny, something's going to cook with the merger. And I think that's another big thing that comes with this plot. Sukuna, he's leaning, I hate to say it, he's leaning more towards Madara-esque. Like, and I'm talking about pre-Sage of Six Paths stuff and pre-Sage of Six Path amps for Naruto and Sasuke Madara. Notably, once Naruto and Sasuke got their Sage of Six Paths amps from Hagoromo, it appeared that they could give Madara a good fight, and it made Kaguya kind of feel like even more out of left field, because suddenly the characters did catch up to Madara, quite drastically, in fact. But for Sukuna, he's feeling like that, oh, I just fought and face tanked Night Guy, I just beat everybody here, I just absorbed the Ten Tails, all that. Like, he's feeling a little bit too broken, but luckily enough, at least for our characters in the plot, Sukuna is still very clearly playing around. You can tell by how he throws out these slashes playfully, how he even admits that the whole reason he's so willing to do this execution, it was likely tagged at all in the previous chapter, was mainly just so he could see the executioner's blade, as he admits himself. I would hear the rules of this domain when I was inside that brat. What I'm interested in is that sword of yours. I couldn't care less about what I did or when I did it. So, very clearly, Sukuna is still in a very playful mood, which is a good thing for the plot, because it means it's going to go on longer. Obviously, if Sukuna was at all serious, it's very likely that these slashes would have just torn Kiguruma to shreds. So don't get me wrong, this is a bad development for our main cast, but, like, they're still alive. which is more than they could be grateful for, especially considering Sukuna didn't actually lose his main curse technique. He ended up losing Kamutoke. And with that, I will admit, I have 30 seconds to plot. Kamutoke does feel kind of like a plot device that was hinted at, and a plot device that feels somewhat built up in the sense of we had the volume cover, and not the volume cover, the chapter cover, and we do have the whole idea of curse tools being imbued with curse techniques. But I will admit, it does feel a little bit fishy that Kamutoke gets introduced, completes absolutely nothing in terms of its main techniques, only to get taken away immediately right after Sukuna got it. And that does feel a teeny tiny bit fishy to me. It feels a little bit contrived, I'm not gonna lie. But hey, I'm still happy that Sukuna's sparing our cast and is giving them a chance to win, no matter how small that chance is. Let me see, we are out of time for the plot, so let's move into the next big thing of what this chapter is primarily about, at least in my opinion. It's the scaling. Unfortunately for my main man Hikari, I mean, this is really a question of how powerful do you think Uraume is? If you think Uraume is a monster like I do, and like Kusakabe does, and like other characters in the narrative tend to, then Hikari doing like negative damage to Uraume is just an upscale for Uraume and how impressive they are. But if you think Uraume is a random, because like all their feats are very sparse and like just generally above grade 1 tier, but we don't know if they reach anywhere in the special grade tier, just like with Hikari and all the Kashimo downplay that's, or not Kashimo downplay, but the Kashimo skepticism that's come in with Kashimo's rather lackluster performance against an Omega damage Maguna, and especially a 4-armed 20-finger Maguna, or now a 20-finger Sukuna, Heian body Sukuna. This relativity that gets established between Hikari and Uraume is very clear. At least in my opinion, it does appear that Uraume does have the edge here. Notably, Hikari's only surviving, once again, due to Jackpot, which is his main ability, so I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But you can see throughout the entire encounter, like, the most damage that Uraume actually takes is, like, nothing from this. Absolutely nothing at all. There are no marks nor any RCT steam after being dunked through multiple buildings. And at the same time, Hikari's taking massive damage from everything, whether it be his arm getting frozen and then punched out of existence, whether it be we see this ice spear tearing straight through him after a casual, well, not casual, but a toss from Uraume and him running right through it. Even his leg getting frozen and broken off. Like, it's very clear, at least in my opinion, that we're kind of in a Kashimo situation again, where Hikari's main sticking point is his longevity and endurance, but in terms of, like, real raw damage, this is the most Hikari does. Like, that is it. And, like, maybe this, but even then, this makes absolutely no sense, unless you just assume this is Hikari's cursed energy trait at work. But even then, for his cursed energy trait, while fueled by Jackpot, to only leave a slight mark on Uraume, a full double standing flying kick, only maybe wiping out a few drops, only for those drops to never appear later on in the rest of this encounter. Yeah, it's not... Hikari's scaling isn't exactly looking the best, but Uraume is looking more and more like a monster. Realize, at least if you go by narrative statements or like narrative implications, Hikari's implied to be above even Maki, and obviously Uraume does have the feats to prove that they are actually kind of above Maki. Once again, I'm not letting it go. I refuse to let it go, but post Sakurajima Maki being tagged while looking Uraume dead in the face, crazy. So Uraume being able to go relative to Hikari, who's implied, admittedly, no matter how I think the matchup goes, who's implied to be Maki superior based on his heavy hitter status, and Hikari stating that Gojo only wanted them to come out if Gojo became weaker than Hikari or Yuta. The fact that Hikari's dominating, or getting dominated, relatively speaking, by Uraume is impressive, but also Hikari forcing Uraume to actually resort to using their full power, the full extent of their power as they claim, and activating their domain expansion is also very, very crazy. Shoutouts to Hikari, though once again, this really comes to a longevity thing. Like, how good can you really rate a punching bag when the punching bag cannot punch you back? Whenever it does punch you back or kick you back, it does very minimal damage. Assumingly, Hikari will most likely win this battle, but who knows? I don't think Hikari will actually be that useful against Sukuna, so I wouldn't be shocked if Gege subverts our expectations here and lets Uraume win this. But another little thingamajig that we get for scaling that I feel like I immediately need to address, because I've seen the, I'm pretty sure it's all meme scaling. I'm pretty sure it's like wank scaling, because we're just messing around at this point. But no, I don't suddenly believe that Kusakabe and Higuruma are above Satoru Gojo. It does a durability. Number one, we see Satoru Gojo eat a whole bunch of these. Number two, we know for a fact these are the regular cleaves and dismantles because we see them travel. And a number three, he's very clearly interested in the Executioner's Blade, and he doesn't want Higuruma to immediately perish. So, like, Of course, he's not going to go all out against Higuruma. And also, like, I just don't think that makes any sense. Like, Higuruma being more durable than Satoru Gojo? Like, where'd this come from? And notably, Satoru Gojo very specifically fell to the space slash, now regular cleaves, and we know Sukuna can suppress his cleaves drastically. We see the main example of it against Ryu. I'm assuming he's just lowering them a whole lot. And considering Kusakabe maybe using Simple Domain here, it may explain why they do even less damage than what Sukuna may have expected, but I still assume that Sukuna's suppressing these down to, like, maybe one finger level of output, because otherwise both of these young men, well, they're not young, but men, should have been torn apart. So scaling wise, this is mainly like an Akari and Uraume chapter, in my opinion, because they're the ones who have the main conflict. Meanwhile, Sukuna is very clearly playing around. It's very hard to tell who actually scales to this man based on his lackadaisical attitude, and I'm already out of time. Let's hop into the final 5-minute discussion, which would have to be characters. Now, admittedly, Hakari doesn't get much new here except for a light implication of his lack of regard for humanity, which is an interesting addition to his character. Notably, it appears that he's one who does believe in the pleasures of life, the vices, if you will, from the gambling, the fever, obviously the connection with other people, such as his love, Kirara. I always say Kirara when it's just Kirara, but with that being the case, and it's interesting that he's so not seemingly disinterested, as he says, everyone's talking about humanity. Is it trending or something? I just got finished hearing the same thing from my junior. He's a bit of a gloomy kid, but he's a man who sticks to his word. And yeah, like, this is kind of just generic stuff that we've already known about Akari, how he respects certain people who stick to their volitions, but his lack of interest in humanity is very, very interesting. Urume's hypocrisy is another nice little interesting note that this chapter gives us. I'm sorry, I'm speaking so fast because I'm trying to utilize this full 5 minutes because, you know, I love characters, but Urume's hypocrisy here is something that's always interesting to note. Notably, we see that their immediate concern is, I was separated from Sukuna-sama. And what do they immediately critique most modern sorcerers for? Their fear of being alone. It's the human fear of being alone that makes them weak. And obviously Urume to some degree fears being alone, and I also do like Urume having respect for modern sorcerers. The one thing of Urume being hypocrite is unique. Obviously the hypocrisy is actually kind of a big part of the JJK universe and power system in general, so that's just a neat little addition. One of the more powerful characters does have a deep case of hypocrisy built into them. And also, I just like this little line here. They so desperately want to hold on to their humanity, constantly telling themselves to hold back from destroying what would be easily crushed with their overwhelming power. I do like that Urume does have some form of respect for modern sorcerers. Do I think it's mostly subconscious and this isn't actually an active thing that Urume's like, oh yeah, the modern sorcerers, they're just so amazing? Absolutely, but even that subconsciously they're willing to recognize the overwhelming power of the individuals they've seen, such as Maki, such as Satoru Gojo, even Hakari himself. Like, obviously, I do like that. That's very, very neat. And the other major character thing, man, if it didn't go... I'm leaning more and more towards Sukuna. Overall, I still will admit I find Kenjaku a more interesting villain as a whole. I find Mahito a more interesting villain as a whole. And I know that's crazy considering Mahito's been out of the narrative for like 100 chapters. But Sukuna's continuing to grow on me more and more. I did kind of predict something like this in the sense that Sukuna would say, yeah, I did it, I don't really care. But his active interest, once again, building up the fact that Sukuna's just a guy who's interested in Jujutsu. Like, he finds the different flavors of humanity, as he put it for Kashimo, so interesting that he's willing to risk something that was described to him as an instant blade of execution just because he wants to see it. And to the point where he doesn't even let Higuruma finish explaining the rules before immediately saying, I ain't with all that talking. Let's just get it done. And he just goes on to get it done. I really, really like that. Computer, I don't like how you're yelling. You're being so annoying right now. But with that being the case, another little detail I do like is Higuruma's hubris, in a sense. This is a little underrated part of his character that's kind of established from his high, lofty horse that he puts himself on early on when we're first introduced to him as the judge, jury, and executioner, if you will. But I like the little hint that he was actually a little bit confident. There's a high possibility that what we confiscated was his shrine. Assuming Sukuna cannot use any curse technique, I'm in complete control with this lethal sword. Like, that kind of arrogance is so interesting. It's a part of Higuruma's character that kind of gets softly hinted at. It's a lot more background stuff, but this is one of the most explicit examples of it, and I really, really like that. Once again, adding layers to these characters, not making them just perfect or one note, is great. I love when Gege does that. So overall, this chapter is kind of pretty much a 10 out of 10 for me. I have no real issues with it. I know a lot of people do not like that Kamusoke was taken, and like I said, even I think that's a little bit of a plot device kind of thing, but plot device is gonna plot device. Obviously, Kamutoke, No matter what, in my opinion, and this is kind of hinting at another video I'm planning to make, it didn't matter what the verdict of the trial was. Every single attack from Sukuna is lethal. All that matters is how much he holds back and how risky he's willing to be. And him being risky enough to engage with the Executioner's Blade is interesting. For what's going to happen next, as I have these last 40 seconds, I assume we're just going to see them replan on the fly. Of course, they don't really have a choice in the scenario. Everyone's already spawned in. You could try to despawn everybody, but I'm assuming Itadori's going to have to leap in. Maybe Maki's going to finally make an appearance because she's been missing since years now. It feels like years. And hopefully Yuta Okkotsu makes a comeback, or Kenjaku. I'm really leading into the idea that the merger or something that Kenjaku's planned is going to have to save us all. Because other than that, I really don't have any idea how they're going to overcome this massive monster that is Realman Sukuna. But allow me to see how much time I have left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's been fun, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick review, especially when the reviews get extra long. Like, if you couldn't tell, the full review of this chapter was extra beefy and girthy. I had so many things I want to talk about. So if you ever want more in-depth thoughts, you can always go to those. But I want to give these to you guys because I know I be yapping a lot. I be yapping endlessly. I be yapping almost as much as Higurumo's yapping, re-explaining the rules in the beginning of this chapter, or towards the middle of this chapter. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick review. Please leave, if you made it all the way to the end, please leave well, actually, no, I already used that. The King's Admission. The King's Admission, as if, like, he was getting admitted to a movie theater. Or to prison, whichever one you want. Please leave the King's Admission in the comment section down below. You made it all the way to the end of this Visumo. And please, do me a favor and leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below, where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter, which is 40 whole minutes, which is really, really chunky now that I think about it. But regardless, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Back of a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakanda Plays, Redel, 4765, and Greyhound. I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Igneal. I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. And I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, Idemokami, and China Doll 09. I'd like to give a thicker than a snicker thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another thicker than a frozen jar of peanut butter thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.